What's up, guys? Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about our fantasy picks and predictions for Thursday Night Football, Week 5, Rams versus the Seahawks in Seattle. I think Russell Wilson's a better quarterback play here. Jared Goff plays a lot worse on the road, and Seattle's a pretty tough environment to play in. Also, Russell Wilson's running ability is something to consider, while Jared Goff is not as quick or elusive. We've seen what Jameis Winston did to LA last week, throwing for 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, only 1 pick. However, Aaron Donald likes to feed on the Seahawks offensive line, and particularly Russell Wilson. He's totaling 10.5 sacks on Russell Wilson. I think this game has a lot of shootout potential, being that both of these defenses are pretty susceptible, especially in the secondary. So I think stacking wide receivers, going really heavy on wide receivers, is a good move. Robert Woods had 15 targets last game, hauling in 13 of them for 164 yards. However, he'll likely be lining up against Shaq Griffin, who's quickly becoming a shutdown corner and is a strong player for the Seahawks secondary. A more favorable matchup for Rams wide receivers is Brandon Cooks against Trey Flowers, who's allowing 66% completions and 2 touchdowns on the year. Cooper Kupp is always a viable option, in my opinion. He's a huge part of the Rams offense. He's number 2 in the league, second to only Keenan Allen in targets. He averages over 18 fantasy points a game, and Jared Goff just force feeds him the ball, and I think he has another big game here. Let's jump over to Seattle. Seeing how the Rams defense played last week, I think Tyler Lockett's also a good play, especially when you pair him with Russell Wilson in your lineup. I think he has a big day and what is likely to be an offensive shootout. I think DK Metcalf is a good value play, maybe even one that you should consider putting as your MVP slot. He hasn't had a breakout game yet, but I'm pretty sure that's coming, and it may be tomorrow night. He has 23 targets in 4 games, 7 of which are in the end zone. He's got a great advantage due to his size and, a meh secondary for the Rams. There's lots of viable plays at the top of the roster, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff, the big wide receivers. So having DK Metcalf at only 8,000 is a good value play. It frees up some salary so you can go out there and snag the bigger guys. Now, running backs. With Rashad Penny returning, I don't think CJ Prosise is a viable option at all. I don't think he sees much workload behind Carson and Penny. They do utilize Chris Carson more in the passing game. He takes a lot of goal line snaps. He takes just over 20 touches per game, which is pretty good. But he has issues with fumbles. He has a fumble in 3 of 4 games so far this season. The only game he didn't have a fumble in was against Arizona last week. So Rashad Penny could be a good value play as well, especially if you think Chris Carson continues turning the ball over a lot. He could see 30% or more of the workload for Seattle. Todd Gurley has been a little disappointing so far this season. He blew up last season, but he seems a little dejected, or I don't know, like he's missing his mojo. But Seattle's run defense is good nonetheless, so I think the lack of productivity from Todd Gurley continues this week. Tight ends. I'm not taking Will Dissly. I think he'll still do well. I just don't know that he'll put up enough points to make it better than going heavy on wide receivers. He hasn't even broken 20 fantasy points a game this season so far. Ideally, we'd like to be at least 20 points per player per game. He's done well in the way of touchdowns, so I could definitely see picking him, especially if you have several lineups going for this game. But his yardage isn't that high, and the amount of touchdowns is not likely to continue. So my final lineup, I got Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Russell Wilson, Brandon Cooks, and Cooper Kupp. I think a lot of people are going to have Russell Wilson, Cooper Kupp, and Tyler Lockett in their lineups, but I think they're going to have those 3 specifically in their MVP slots. Because of that, I'm going to put Brandon Cooks as my MVP. I did leave $1,000 on the table, but we'll see how it works out. That's the lineup for this game, and I may enter a few more between now and game time, but I'll definitely do a follow-up video for this lineup as well as any other ones I get into. Let me know what you guys think of the lineup. Who's your value sleeper play? Who's your MVP slot? And do you guys prefer FanDuel or DraftKings? Let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, as well as subscribe to see more football and fantasy-related videos. We'll see you guys tomorrow.